Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to AI Horizons. And if this is your first time joining us, we welcome you to the AI Horizons community. So welcome back to the fall semester. We have a great agenda here today. We're going to do a fall kickoff and go over a brief summary of our summer work that we have worked through, which I have shared up on the screen here, AI Horizons Summer School. I'm going to go ahead and post this link into our chat for everyone to review. So what this is I just took everyone's thoughts and ideas from the Padlet board, which is also linked on here. So for those of you that didn't get a chance to participate, you can use this as a high-level summary. And then the Padlet board is in here, so you can jump in and look more specifically at some of those ideas. So while we get started, there is that link. But we have one brief quick announcement that we're going to jump to, and Jesse Driver is going to quickly share about the AI Provost endorsement that will be launching again this semester. So Jesse, take it away.
Thanks, Zach, and thanks for sharing the slide. After several requests over the summer, we are going to be offering the AI-enhanced pedagogy Provost endorsement again in the coming year. It's going to be basic for beginners, so if you've completed the endorsement in the past, then it would be the same kind of content for you. But if you wanted, maybe you started it and want a chance to complete it, you could build from your work before and complete it in the next year. Or if you're brand new to Penn State and just want to be familiar with what is happening with AI, what different people are doing in their classes, and be part of the discussion, this would be for you. So the requirements are, between now and the end of the year, which is December 31st, the end of the year 2025, so by the end of December, you will have 7 hours of Penn State AI-focused events. So we will have a schedule posted for you at the link at the bottom here. Our website is undergoing some maintenance for the past couple of weeks, but it will be posted at this website. And we'll share this link, the slide somehow, probably in Teams. You have it. And the event schedule will be posted there, where you can see we're trying to collect all of the Penn State-related events in one place so that you can quickly see what will fit in your schedule and find 7 hours of events. Then you will mark up a syllabus or an assignment activity so that it is personalized to your class, and you'll submit that on Canvas. You'll actually, when I say mark it up, you'll add something related to AI. You could add some guidelines, you could add an assignment, you could add a brand new project that uses AI in the project, but you'll mark it up in the assignment and submit that on Canvas. And then you'll also submit a Teams reflection post, which sums up your activities that you attended, so that you'll have all of your insights gathered together and make some sense out of it. And then finally, from doing these activities, you'll have somewhat of an AI philosophy that you'll want to be able to share with your students and your colleagues. So you're going to create, for your final deliverable, an AI philosophy video, a short video, 2 to 3 minutes. And on these 3 items that you submit to Canvas, you will get personalized feedback from people running the endorsement. So Zach, Brad, Kozlek, and I are the endorsement co-leads, and we'll provide feedback and just kind of give you encouragement on what sounds like it'll be very exciting, and maybe any thoughts that we have on what you could do in addition. So these Provost endorsements appear in Workday and Activity Insights, whichever one you use if you're staff or faculty, and those will be available in early January. And the enrollment, so anyone who wants to participate, we're going to keep people kind of moving through together. You'll need to enroll on the web link below. It will be open until September 30th. It will be open as soon as our website is back up and running. So I see a couple of questions there, and I can answer in the chat if time is of the essence. But thanks for a couple of minutes just to announce that this is coming back. And if you're interested in exploring more about AI and haven't gotten the endorsement yet, then this is for you. We look forward to seeing you this semester. All right, I'll answer questions in the chat. Thanks.
Thank you, Jesse. It looks like folks are saying the link is not working.
One thing I'll say is that the TLT website is currently undergoing maintenance, and it may not be available for some people. If you're getting this, you can't reach this site message.
Yeah, I'm getting your connection is not private. And
Yeah.
I know I was doing a lot of sites work yesterday, and I was running into so many errors and stuff. So maybe just check back in a day or two, and the website may be back up and operational.
It should be back within 30 minutes, as I've been told. So.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, well, thank you very much, Jesse, for that announcement. So it looks like we are about ready to kick things off, and we have here with us today Dr. Stuart Selber. So he is a professor of English and affiliate professor with the IST, College of IST. And he is also the director of digital education, the program in writing and rhetoric in Penn State's Digital English Studio. So Dr. Selber, it was his blog post that we were using for AI Horizons Summer School, and he has joined us here today to share an update on his thinking around his AI tenets and just give us an update of what's happening in his department over in the College of Liberal Arts. So Stuart, without further ado, I'll kick it over to you.
Thanks, Zach. Can you remind me how much time we have here? I want to leave plenty of time for discussion.
Yeah, so we have until 11 a.m. today. So you are the only presenter we have. So we can, you can take as little or as long as you want, and we'll have we have some questions already in the queue, so we're ready to go.
Yeah, great. Okay, well, thank you, and thanks for having me. Good to see everybody. As Zach said, I run the program in writing and rhetoric. You probably know that all Penn State students have 9 gen ed requirements, 9 credits of gen ed requirements in speaking and writing. 6 of those 9 credits are English 15 and English 202. And there's really not a way to get around that. We don't take AP credits, for example. It's not a high school class. So, we see everybody twice. I'm sure we're the largest program on campus. And of course, these are writing classes where writing is not just assigned and collected, but writing is taught by people with training and how to teach writing at the college level. So, we're in the AI trenches. And of course, the things I say, the little manifesto you read, and the things I'll say today come from that disciplinary perspective. But everyone writes. So I'm hoping these things are broadly relevant. I'm going to share can people see what I'm sharing? Zach, can you see that?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so I'm going to talk through 3 updates. A lot of it happened last year and through the summer, and they're also in a way updates to the manifesto, which was a kind of some of my early thinking. I worry that we often talk about AI ahistorically, as if writing hasn't always been mediated by technology. So I think it's important to take one of the tenets of the manifesto is that, AI is evolutionary, not revolutionary. It comes from somewhere. As you know, I'm sure the field of artificial intelligence, academic field, dates to the 50s. field's been humbled many times, as all fields have been humbled many times. But it didn't come out of thin air, and I think it's important to understand it as a literacy technology, especially a chatbot where people write and where robots mimic how people write. And I want to talk a little bit about what exactly is Gen AI literacy. There is a field of literacy studies that has 50 years of empirical research on sense making and meaning making with language, and the technologies that support language production and reception. And so, we already know a lot about how people make meaning. It's not an entirely new ball game. And Chris Millay, I think he's on this call. He's invited me to collaborate on a Gen AI literacy module for the World Campus for W classes, writing intensive classes. So I'm trying to take some things out of my field and writing studies and make sure we can apply them and leverage them a little more broadly. And then I want to just share a little graphic I made on how to think about your level of engagement with AI, because not everybody needs to engage it on the same level, even if everybody needs to think about it at least a little bit. And I'm responsible for 200 teachers who are responsible for 18,000 students a year in writing classes. And, many of them are quite overwhelmed by all of this. So I want to share that, which I do think that's a little, I do think that's broadly applicable. So I talk to my teachers in order to historicize and situate AI and think about it as evolutionary. I kind of use these talking points. So I thought I would share them with you. Each talking point is not always, does not always label AI. Sometimes it's another writing technology, but that's purposeful because, again, I want us to see AI as, the latest version of a writing technology, and there will be others, and many old ones are, in full use. We never developed a paperless office, the paperless world that was, predicted by a 1970s book from MIT Press, and that doesn't make sense anyway because we make meaning in a variety of ways. So I start off by talking to my teachers about like what is technology in the first place. And the point I like to make to them first is that technology can be a thing like an AI platform, but it can also be a process or a system. So a library database is a technology, but so is the Dewey Decimal System or the Library of Congress system that we use to organize text so we can access them. The last little sentence under that first one, I would argue technology is a means of rationalizing and ordering culture. So then I think if you take that view of technology, you can ask some questions about any software that's in front of you. So I often am talking about writing. So how does Microsoft Word organize writing? We often don't think about that because it's become a part of our common sense. We have an institutional license, but obviously it treats text like a scroll, right? So you can begin with an interface metaphor, and you can move out from there. That's not a criticism, by the way. We just want people to understand how their work is mediated by software. And another relevant question, how does Canvas organize teaching and learning? Canvas was made for anyone and everyone teaching anything and everything at every level, right? K through 12, up in all fields. So, I mean, it can't attend to anybody in particular very well. So we have a lot of strategies for making it work in a particular places. But I think those are important questions to ask. Meaning is not a property of technology. So something like AI will become imbued with meaning in certain contexts and cases. It will mean one thing over in admissions. It will mean a different thing in SMEAL. It will mean a different thing in the writing program. It could even mean different things in the writing program, as you can see by my question. So this last sentence here, trees become a technology when they're used to mark property boundaries or reduce noise. So we don't think of trees as technology so much, but when we plant them to reduce noise, if your home is next to a highway, they become imbued with that kind of meaning and they have become a technology. So I like to kind of help people think about that meaning doesn't reside in, ChatGPT. It resides in the larger kind of context. The stance I take with my teachers, and they're all over the map, right, in their acceptance levels and experience, as as is the more general population. My view is we should not be cheerleaders, and we should not be naysayers. We should be curious professionals, and we should be willing to engage it. And there will be winners and losers. You look at the history of automation, uh, there are always winners and losers. There will be positives. There will be problems, and everyone is, I'm sure, quite familiar with the problems. And so that third bullet really gets at what I often talk to students about. Given the curious stance that I'd like people to have, how can we design, in my case, our classes and programs, or whatever work context that you're in? How can you encourage AI outcomes that are congruent with your professional values, whatever those happen to be? That's what many people are looking for. I already noted that writing has always been mediated by technology, from stone tablets and papyrus rolls to pens and paper, to printing press, typewriters, word processors, smartphones, the internet, artificial intelligence, and beyond. And of course, the last 30, 35 years, there's been a mass acceleration of the mediated possibilities. But you probably know something about the history of the printing press and what that did for democracy. That's when literacy came to the masses. Before the printing press, it was really the terrain of the wealthy, religious leaders, government leaders. So there's always been more to literacy than just writing and reading. There has been the technologies that enable constrained writing and reading, and we often don't think about older technologies like chalkboards or books as technologies because they've become naturalized. So I often ask my students and teachers, which technologies did you learn to read and write with? In other words, ask them about their literacy history. And do they still think of those things as technologies? With AI, we are in this liminal moment where AI is still strange enough and new enough where we can ask hard questions about it. But it will pass through that liminal period. It may take some years, but every technology has passed through that liminal period, and then it becomes much harder to question it because it's just in the air we breathe. So we have a moment here to be careful with it. When technologies show up, when we start Copilot, when we log into Canvas, when we log into Teams or Zoom or anything else, those technologies reflect the perspectives of their designers. How could they not? It's not a criticism. It's a designed artifact. So the people who design those applications, they are making strong suggestions for use about what it means to teach and learn, as in how Canvas is designed, what it means to write, as in how Microsoft Word is designed. What does it mean to have a meeting, as in the way Zoom is designed, et cetera. And I often ask my students and teachers, do you use technologies in their default mode, effectively accepting those suggestions? Do you customize them? Do you hack them? So I just want people to be sensitive to the fact that these are not neutral technologies. And I often hear people say, well, the technology doesn't really matter, just how you use it is what matters. In other words, you could use a hammer to build a house for habitat or for humanity, or you could use a hammer to kill somebody. But true, but you can't substitute a hammer for a saw or a pair of pliers, right? The tools aren't neutral. They have design affordances, they enable and constrain, and we just want to be alert to that when we teach people and when we ask them to use technologies for teaching and for learning. I mentioned I come out of a field. There's 50 years of empirical research on writing, including digital writing. And the point I want to make here is simply that there are a lot of claims that people are making about Gen AI, and very few are substantiated with empirical evidence. And the danger is that a claim becomes a potent myth and unquestioned. So, for example, and this was in my manifesto, I hear a lot of people talk about how Gen AI is going to save money, save time and money. And the history of technology doesn't support that. What it supports is that technology shifts time and money. And I just think we don't want to implement these things because we think somehow all of a sudden we're going to have more money on our hands or more time on our hands, because that's just not reality. And if there's a savings in an area, you typically see it offset. We need support staff for any new technology. We need training materials. There's learning time. It's kind of endless. And if you're familiar with what researchers call the task artifact cycle, new technologies solve problems and create them simultaneously. So it's not like a new technology gets dropped into a institutional or organizational setting, and there are no other. It only solves problems. It also creates, and we're seeing that with AI, creates new problems around academic integrity, around copyright, and many other areas. So I just want us to be a little more nuanced about it. Teachers, but also any worker at Penn State, none of us are islands unto ourselves, obviously. We work within a larger institutional setting, and that setting has a great bearing on what is possible to do with our own work. So I often ask, what are larger aspects of educational institutions that can affect how we understand and teach writing, or how we use Gen AI or any other? Because our policies will matter, our pedagogies will matter, and more. All of that will matter as much as the particulars of a Gen AI platform. So we have to engineer both the technical and the social context to get the outcomes that are congruent with our professional values. I tell teachers who are new teachers, and I've got 35 new teachers this year, and as you can imagine, I have dozens of new teachers every year. And I tell them, I want you to start with your professional goals. What do you want to achieve in your class? And then see if AI technology can support those goals. And that's a great place to start. But the reality is that the relationship between literacy and technology is not one way or one dimensional. It's dialectical, it's recursive. So as the history of technology shows, as technologies shape how we think about literacy. So I want my teachers to be open to how something like Gen AI can challenge our own take it for granted assumptions about what it means to write and read and be a writer. And so this is all part of being that curious professional. We start with trying to use AI to support what we do, but we should be open to how AI might change what we do. And it may not always be productive, but that's the more realistic relationship between literacy and technology. And then finally, I encourage them to experiment within reason. And like I said before, we have very little empirical evidence right now. So we got to start generating that evidence, whether that's, just firsthand experience with a group of students. You don't have to publish about that to be empirical evidence, or their larger studies. And I'll return to this question about finding your role. So these are talking points I use with my teachers. I don't want people to think that the writing program started caring about technology when AI came on the scene. It's the latest literacy technology. My field did studies of word processing in the 70s. And believe it or not, we used to ask, does word processing result in better papers or worse papers? And it wasn't a very good question, because let's say the answer was it results in worse papers. It's not like people are going to stop word processing. So we need to take what I have called a post-critical perspective, where we don't think about causality as like word processing on its own is better or worse for writers, but we think about word processing wrapped with a pedagogy in an institutional setting where teaching and learning happens, and what we can engineer so students can learn how to use it and be critical of it and understand how it mediates writing. And so that's a good transition to this. I'll just finish up here with these two images here. Make this a little bigger if I can. So what is literacy anyway? I would first say that literacy will mean different things in different contexts. So if you're involved in any Gen AI literacy projects, you want to be transparent about what that actually means. Otherwise, you can't measure, right, if you've achieved your outcomes. You have to know what you're after there. And the first thing I would say is that literacy is a process. In other words, we can't make a badge and once you've earned the badge, you are now literate, right? Same with ethics. I've earned the ethics badge. I'm now ethical. That's the problem I've had with badging systems, is that they take these very complex things, which are actually ongoing processes, and they set them up as boxes to check. So we want to teach people that literacy is a reasoning process. It's a sense-making and meaning-making process, as is ethics. Ethics is a reasoning process. And if someone's going to be ethical with Gen AI, what that means is that they know how to reason through situations that involve Gen AI and come to an outcome that aligns with whatever the standards or conventions were for being ethical in the first place. And Penn State, we have a code of we have ethical already. We have ethical principles already at Penn State, and those should probably be a starting point for any discussions of what does it mean to be ethical in an AI context. But what you're seeing in this table is really like a heuristic, and by a heuristic, I simply mean a thinking tool for like developing a Gen AI literacy approach. And so what I would encourage you to do is not think about literacy in the singular, but first think about multiple literacies or a multi-literacy. And in the multi-literacy that I'm going to be using to help Chris Millay put together a module for the W classes in the World Campus, I'm thinking very specifically of 3 types of literacy. There's a functional literacy, where we think about Gen AI a little more one-dimensionally as a tool. There's a tool metaphor, which, the good side of the tool metaphor is that it it situates human responsibility. You are responsible for the tools that you employ, even if they are come to you with affordances. So there's a tool metaphor, and we position students as users of technologies. There's another type of literacy. There's a critical literacy, where the metaphor there is technologies as cultural artifacts. Gen AI is an artifact of culture, and we want to look at how it was put together and designed, and the values of the software, the suggestions it's making for use. We want to be able to look at all of that. And in that literacy, we position students as questioners of technologies, so they can do informed critique, not just of Gen AI, for example, of the library databases that they're using to produce their research. All databases just have bias. It has to. It doesn't work. So the kinds of bias we're worried about with Gen AI is like problematic bias, negative bias. But bias is actually a resource, because we have to delimit. We have to delimit the field of possibilities with search engines and everything else. And then the third type of literacy is a rhetorical literacy, where we think about like the media specificities of the digital, and the specific affordances of robots and what they do. And we see students there not as just users or questioners, but producers. So if they use Gen AI to generate content that becomes part of a infographic that sits on the web, now they're contributing to the content on wide area networks that has become the norm for writing and reading. So I don't value one of these three literacies over the other. What I would say is somebody who is literate in the kind of Gen AI terms that I want to encourage, I would say they now have to employ the right literacies at the right times and in the right combinations, i.e., their reasoning processes. So sometimes they will be in a functional mode. Sometimes they will be in a critical mode. Sometimes they will be in a rhetorical mode. And I'm separating those for like analytic purposes. Often they're combined in some kind of way. I mean, you can't produce a good website without both effective employment and informed critique, for example. So they combine in all kinds of ways. Again, that is how I am thinking about literacy right now, that we produce students who can employ the right literacies at the right times in the right combinations as they are solving problems that will involve Gen AI and other literacy technologies. I realize that's a little abstract, but my hope is that people can take that heuristic or framework and then interpret it in their own disciplinary context and put some meat on the bones for their own programs and put it to work. And then let's see, this looks kind of small to me, so let me see if I can make this last thing a little bit bigger. So finally, this little diagram on modes of engagement for Gen AI from passive to active. Many people are overwhelmed right now, and I think it could be useful for them to think about what should their level of engagement be. And so I've put together this continuum here of passive to active engagement, where we're both accommodating the institutional thinking about Gen AI and also resisting it for our own disciplinary purposes. So in the most passive mode, you're simply maintaining awareness of Gen AI. Everybody needs some awareness of it. And there are many ways to help people maintain an awareness. This group is a perfect example of one of them. It's the lowest level of engagement, very passive engagement. Next level is that you're actually employing it on some level. The systems and services that Penn State is endorsing and supporting. So that's the obvious step from awareness to use. And then the third step, and I think a lot of people in this Zoom might be involved in this third step, which is explaining AI and Penn State's approaches and applications to people in their units, to others around them. So that's me, right? I'm mediating for my teachers. Teachers are mediating for students. Many of you are mediating for faculty. So, and then crossing over that dotted line into something that's a little more active, we can participate as user advocates. So we can involve ourselves in Penn State pilot programs and other kinds of activities where we're beginning to think about, what does GenAI mean for students? What does it mean for teachers? What does it mean for people in my units? And actually start participating in what the institution is doing to begin to develop that firsthand understanding. We can get involved in actual projects. So Brad Kozlik, who's on this call, Brad is involved in building a chatbot for my program that students can use to ask questions about the syllabus, which doesn't seem like much of a thing, but when you have 18,000 students asking questions about kind of a standard syllabus, and it's a very involved course with many aspects, we're trying to see if we can design a chatbot for that purpose. And who knows what the outcome will be, but taking a risk, experimenting, and working as a designer. And then the final level of engagement is actually engaging in some kind of research supported by TLT or our AI hubs, our centers have grants. Deans are supporting research. And it's not just like faculty research, like admissions is trying to figure out what the role of robots are in the admissions process. So, I mean, it's happening, we need research on all levels. So I found that this kind of this final heuristic really can allow my teachers to settle down a little bit as they locate themselves in this continuum and think about, what do I really need to do? And by the way, this can shift over time. So sometimes a passive awareness could be enough. At another time, maybe they need to get involved in a pilot project. And then maybe they can go back to just their use of. So it's not like you locate yourself, for once and all. But this can help you think about, like, how high does your cortisol level need to get around this stuff? And maybe sometimes you can work a little more passively and accommodate. And maybe sometimes you need more engagement. So I'm going to stop there. And that's an update on some of my thinking.
That's fantastic, Stuart. I learned a lot just hearing about your updates here. And so now it's Q&A time. If anybody has any questions for Stuart, I'll kick things off because I have a question that I wanted to ask Stuart is, so looking into a little bit about like what you do here at Penn State, I didn't know you were an affiliate professor of IST as well. So since you straddle both English and IST, I wonder if you have noticed different ways in which IST students or English students or IST staff and English staff, how they talk about AI. Are you noticing any difference between the two colleges?
The work in IST is fabulous, but it's a very different disciplinary language, obviously. So it's funny because when I was, this is my 27th year at Penn State, and I'm in the English department, but I have no literary training. I come out of a writing studies background. And I remember sitting in a meeting like 15 years ago where somebody said, any of our faculty should be able to teach English 200, which is like intro to like literature. And I was like, yeah, I can't teach that. I better go over to IST and teach like whatever it was, 110 or whatever the intro to IST is. And it is the same, many of the same things I teach in technical writing, but just kind of cast a little bit differently. Like we teach usability, accessibility, and we teach all of those things because we understand that when software and writing came together, right? So a lot of online texts operate like software. You don't just read them, you're a user. And so all of a sudden, English and software interfaces were kind of one and the same. And it's only gotten more complex. So there's a disciplinary differences. And I will say, I just did a review of 3 AI books. Sal Khan's book, Ethan Malick's book. These are all, the big popular books. And what is bothersome to me is that they all talk about writing in AI, but like Malick's a professor of entrepreneurship. Khan is, none of them have training in writing. They probably don't even know it's a field. So that's my big worry, that, a lot of these writing platforms are being developed by people with no expertise in writing, which is nothing new. I'd be surprised if Microsoft Word was developed by anybody with deep expertise in writing. So that is a worry I have. So that we're not always getting the right perspectives, even in an IST course where I think they're doing a fabulous job over there.
Awesome. Thanks. Any questions for Stuart? Okay, well, I got another one. I don't want to.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, we have something here.
I'm kind of scrolling it. Yeah.
Okay. Looks like Carmen has, Carmen's interested in the conversation about chatbots. I know there's interest, but I have concerns about monitoring, auditing. What jumped? Chatbot answers, especially if it has access to the internet. As I've read, chatbots can go wrong. I would love to hear of others' experience.
I'll just say one quick thing about chatbots, which is I don't think the future of chatbots is a chatbot trained on the vagaries of the open internet. I just don't. I mean, that's what we have now. But I think the future is a chatbot trained on PubMed for a cardiologist. A chatbot trained on textbooks in writing for writing classes. And, publishers lost their day in court when they sued OpenAI over copyright infringement, because OpenAI trained ChatGPT without permission of the people who held the copyright. And the courts have said that was a transformative use. They can do it under fair use. So now all of a sudden, and that'll be appealed, but genie's out of the bottle. And so all of a sudden now publishers are striking deals with AI companies. And it's an expensive future, but I think that's the future of reliable and good or better chatbot interaction than just, there's a bunch of stuff that was on the internet, we trained the robot on it, and you get the answers you get.
And just to connect to that, we have a couple more questions that came in, but I was just at InstructureCon 2 weeks ago, and they had a Moments of the Future, which showed 5 new technologies. Instructure, which is the company that runs Canvas, they're working on. One of them, they're calling knowledge graphs, which if they have their way, will be integrated directly into Canvas. Now, this isn't anything that's coming anytime soon, and if it does, who knows if Penn State will turn it on, but it's essentially a knowledge graph. A faculty member can take a book, any academic book, train this knowledge graph that lives within Canvas, and then that becomes a chat bot just for that book. And then they envision that these knowledge graphs talking to other knowledge graphs within this Canvas ecosystem, which is very much almost exactly what you were mentioning right there.
And
it looks
the
like-
worry that we all have, that educators have, is are students outsourcing learning to a robot?
Right.
And maybe the robots are going to encourage us to think differently about what is learning. I'm open to that. I already mentioned there's a recursive relationship between the two, but we have a lot of work to do to figure that out. And I would say at this point, there's a lot of outsourcing of learning. We also have to keep in mind that I often hear, well, when they get into the workplace, they're going to have to know how to use these tools. And it's true. Like, the boss in the workplace says, I need the annual report by Friday. They don't care if you use AI or not, especially because according to AI companies, you own the copyright to both your prompts and the output. So it's not a copyright issue. They will care about the product. But over here, we care about learning. And usually when you're assessing learning in many fields, you have to look at more than the product to assess learning, the final product. You have to assess process work, and process thinking. And so we do have different responsibilities in education. And I don't always hear people holding those up and thinking carefully about those special responsibilities.
All right, so we have a question from Matt. How about the other side of writing, discourse? As a technology that can engage in simulated discourse with humans, it seems more revolutionary than evolutionary, which I think connects to one of your AI tenets of it being evolutionary and not revolutionary.
Matt, do you mean like how chatbot functions? Is that?
Yeah, exactly. Or you think
Yeah.
of something like therapy mediated by
Yeah.
bot.
Yeah. So I love this question. And I think this was in the manifesto, but like, we have to keep in mind that what we are getting from a chatbot is a mathematical response, right? And that's not a criticism. That's what it is. It's a mathematical response. It's pattern matching. And then, and using statistical probability, it's mimicking. And it doesn't always work, of course. Like when you're on your phone and you say, I'm going to the, it's going to give you 5 options. It's never going to say I'm going to the purple. It's not a pattern it's encountered. So, that I would say it's evolutionary because of, first of all, the technologies that it's based on are not new. But also it's mimicking us. These are speech patterns. And so it's giving back to us what we put out there in the first place. There are some revolutionary things going on in that, like, okay, it can process billions of tokens in a second. We certainly can't do that. And there can be some very good things that come from that. Take like Yelp reviews. If you own a restaurant and there are 10,000 Yelp reviews, you're probably not looking at those. Robot could look at those in no time, show you some patterns. It wouldn't be better probably than if you were able to go through it yourself, but you're not able to go through it yourself. So you're getting something when you would probably get nothing. And it can do more things for us than that, but that's just a very small example. So I agree. There are some new and different things going on. I just don't think we've done a very good job of like explaining that. Because when I hear people's language about, well, AI thinks, it's thinking, or it's learning. Okay, it may be doing thinking of a kind or learning of a kind, but it doesn't learn like we do. And having it unlearn is possible, but you put your hand on a hot stove, right? Like, you know, you've unlearned putting your hand on a stove. It doesn't work that way. And so I think we just need to you have more precise language about how it works, what it does, what it buys us. And then I said this in a Zoom I was on from 9 to 10. I really don't like this phrase that many of us have picked up from the AI community, which is human in the loop. Because to me, when they say, well, let's just make sure we have a human in the loop, that means we're handing things over to AI and we're monitoring them for risk. And if we can mitigate the risk, it will be okay. I much prefer AI in the loop. So we have these human processes, and then let's see where AI may have a role in these human processes. And sure, we may automate. Look, we've already automated things. We've automated spelling. Even though, and that's an easy thing to automate. We've automated grammar in many ways, even though strong writers make decisions about grammar because there's always more than one grammatical option in any writing situation. It's not like programming where, sure, there are different ways to code things, but it executes or it doesn't. It's right or wrong. It's not how language works. That's really a bottom here, is that there's an ambiguity in human language that a robot just can't account for because they don't interpret. So what we do as writers is we provide context when we write to make sure that we get an interpretation, or we hope to get the interpretation that we're after. And robots can do that too, but not because they're making choices. Rather, they're just mimicking patterns. And sometimes it could work out, often not. And if anything is at stake, high stakes, including education, you certainly wouldn't want to trust a robot's ability when there's something at stake.
Okay, we have, looks like the chat is really productive right now. I'm trying to get to all the questions, but I'm going in order of which they came in. So we have a question from Anna here, or Anna, I apologize. What's a motivator in respect to the last graphic in terms of resistance on the y-axis?
Yeah, I had a new teacher in orientation last week raise their hand and say, what if I have a student who says, because we require AI use in English 15 with boundaries. What if the student doesn't want to use it based on ethical principles? And I said, what would an example be? Well, the environmental impact. The environmental impact is massive if you haven't looked at that. And then I say, okay, well, what about the ethical principle of you have 24 students? So of you spending 99% of your time on one student because now you have to create a different assignment for them and your other students are getting less of your attention, right? Like there's always like, I'm not saying that student like that's not a concern, but like it's so much more complex. And so these, and we have teachers who flat out refuse to use it. And I say, okay, I don't think that's the right approach, but they're teachers of record, and you don't get anywhere mandating these things. And what I tell them is that if you don't get involved and you put your head in the sand and pretend like it doesn't matter to writing and teaching and learning, other people will define the terms of engagement for you. So I think the resistance I'm talking about is not so much the teachers who say, I don't want to use it. The resistance I'm talking about is something like, I resist this language of human in the loop. I want to foreground AI in the loop. I resist this language of robots think, robots learn, and I want to replace it with the language of robots mimic, because that, one, it's more accurate, and two, I think it sets the table for a much better conversation than, so institutional resistance is not so much I'm not doing it, but rather you're challenging the ways that we are approaching it as an institution. from your disciplinary perspective, and you are hired to have that disciplinary perspective, and we're counting on everybody to contribute to that.
Okay, so I'm going to try and squeeze in one more question from Renee Ford. I think this is going to connect back to some policy around Penn State. Renee asked, do you serve on any of the AI committees? If so, I'm curious about what kinds of things the team or university are reviewing that you can comment on, or anything else about that work.
Serve on all of them, unfortunately. So there are committees that approve the purchase of new AI platforms. There's a committee that approves the turning on of an AI feature that has been added to a platform that we already own, like Zoom and Canvas and Office. When they come out with AI features, we don't just turn them on automatically, we review them. The most important committee that I feel like I am on is one that is trying to get a handle on how can teachers use AI for grading. And you probably know that students have sued universities because faculty have used a robot for grading, and students have said, I didn't come here to get robot feedback on my work. I came here to get human feedback on my work. And it's such and there are all kinds of different things being graded. There are all kinds of different assignments. I like to make a distinction between commenting and grading, because grading is actually very simple. Put a grade on something. The real labor in working with students is giving them feedback and commenting. And there are some people who are like, yeah, I can just train a rubric on that, and I don't have to do that anymore. I'll spend my time training the rubric, and the robot can give my students feedback. And that's terrifying to me. It's not that there can't be some role for AI, but if you've done any grading, you realize that it can't be automated because it's not repeatable in any kind of normal way. Every student gets their own comments, even if sometimes you're commenting on the same thing, like, oh, this paper isn't very well organized. Let me comment on that. But you're commenting on the particular organizing problems that the student had and calling out examples. And the thing to remember about commenting is on student work, the role of it is to teach something. It's not to justify the grade. And a lot of people don't understand that. And so they're very quick to hand that over and let the robot try to teach students. And so here we are. Now we're just not worried about outsourcing learning to a robot. Now we're talking about outsourcing teaching to a robot. And so I think that committee for me is super complex and fraught and exciting and just very important.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Stuart. I know this has been a great presentation for myself in general, and it seems like a lot of people in the comments agree as well. I do encourage everybody to keep the conversation going in AI Horizons. Looks like we have a great conversation between roles-based and RAG chatbots here. And to Stuart and the rest of the faculty and staff on this call, good luck for the fall 2025 semester. And we will see you in September. One quick thing, an invitation to anybody here. If you would like to share any AI announcements at AI Horizons in the future, please connect with me. Or if you have any ideas that you'd like to share around projects you're doing in your classroom, or if you know of other faculty doing really interesting things around AI, connect them with me. We would love to connect them with the larger AI Horizons. So it's 11:02. Thank you everybody for sticking around a couple extra minutes, and we'll see you online. Thank you.